To other news now, ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula says Jacob Zuma's recognition of Morocco comes as no surprise after photos emerged of the MK party leader in Morocco with a South African flag behind him. Mbalula has reaffirmed the ANC's unwavering support for Western Sahara's self-determination, a stance Morocco rejects despite widespread condemnation across Africa and the AU. Well, the ANC adopted this policy at its 2007 Polokwane conference when Zuma became party president and reaffirmed it in 2012. During his tenure, the ANC consistently backed Western Sahara's independence. Well, joining us now for more on this is SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Could this cause diplomatic friction between South Africa and Morocco or even within the African Union?
Yes, it will, because what happened is that the South African flag was used, and in this case, Morocco, the people who were doing set-up did that. The intention was clear, to say, now as Morocco, we have support from South Africa. Because for many years, Morocco has been trying to persuade South Africa to accept Morocco's intention to take control of that area. And South Africa has been a stumbling block, both as a country-to-country level, at the multilateral level, at the UN. South Africa has always supported the Sahrawi people for their self-determination. At the AU, the same thing, or the same position has been the position of South Africa, to say, let there be freedom for Sahrawi people. And therefore, Morocco has always seen South Africa as problematic. But now with the current political situation in the country, where the previous governing party, the ANC, was commanding control and strong voice, with the government of national unity, infiltration is quite easy. Therefore, you see people taking sides and using different people and organizations in the country to push their own agenda. And therefore, it might not have been the president of the MK who used the flag, because if he was there as the president of the MK, he was supposed to use the MK flag. If he was there as the former president of the Republic, the embassy of South Africa in Morocco would have made the arrangements, and they would have agreed on what is going to be communicated, not something that will be in conflict with the South African foreign policy on the Sahrawi question. And therefore, that will cause a row, because Morocco will have to explain, why did you use our flag when you were hosting him in his capacity as a party leader, not as a former president? Because there's nothing wrong for former heads of state to go overseas to talk with their foundations or as former presidents. And when they do that, when they take a neutral stand, that is not in conflict with the foreign policy of South Africa. The embassies, high commissioners in those respective countries they are visiting, they do help them, because once a head of state, you enjoy the privileges of being a former head of state, and the government help you with your transport, your security, including outside the country. And therefore, the embassy of South Africa in Morocco will also have to explain whether they were aware, did he come there as the former president of the Republic, or he was there in his capacity. And you can only get those answers if you summon the ambassador of Morocco in South Africa to explain. And therefore, that summoning might create tension. And we already know that actually there's this disagreement on the Sahrawi question.
How might this affect South Africa's long-standing support for the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic?
It won't affect the relationship between the current government in its current form as it relates to the foreign policy, because they will be aware that South Africa has already, particularly the former governing party and the current party that's leading the coalition, has objected. I don't think it has actually put back to spotlight the struggle of the Sahrawi people, because we've been talking about this since Saturday, and there are more reaction from political parties in the country, more reaction from the continent. And the issue here is that there is a UN resolution on the Western Sahara that the Sahrawi people, they must have their freedom and independence. That's the only land that's being occupied right now. The other issue is that the AU Charter is clear about the Western Sahara question. Morocco left the Organization of African Unity. It was in 1984 when the OAU adopted a resolution for the self-determination of the Sahrawi people. When the AU was launched in 2000 in Durban, the first chair being a former South African president, Thabo Mbeki, again, that launch and the changing of the OAU to the AU supported the self-determination of the Sahrawi people. It became part of the AU Constitutive Act and Charter. It hasn't changed. That is why Western Sahara, when you talk about member states of the AU, you're talking about 54 countries, including the Western Sahara. So when you deal with the Western Sahara question, you have to look at that. And the current position of the MK is in conflict with the UN resolution and the AU resolution. Maybe it was a mistake, but the MK is arguing that it has got the right to have its own policies. In other words, they are going to deviate from the UN Charter, the UN resolution, and the AU Charter. I think that's where the debate is currently. And of course, parties have a right to take different positions as independent parties, because he is not leading perhaps the ANC with that policy anymore. And therefore, that's where the debate is right now.
Thank you, Sophie, for your input on that matter. That was SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena on that Morocco Sahrawi issue.